that's the only way that I think that you can end up making incredible products like this guy right here. This is the Solo X that I actually picked up, and this has been 8 weeks ago. This is around the time I reached out to you. This right here, as far as we're going to do more with gear in 2021, guys. If you're one of those gear guys, kind of like I am, it doesn't get better than this. Okay. When you're looking for the best, I'm holding the best right here. And you can take that and I'm not being, Phil can tell you, I'm not being paid to say this. This is incredible. So if you're within the sound of my voice, it's 2021. We're officially back in circulation. You're listening to the Rocker Life. I'm Aaron K, your host. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and or watching on the newly launched Rocker Life YouTube channel. And I have a very special guest today from SoloDallas. You can learn more about SoloDallas at SoloDallas.com. And I've got Mr. Fil Olivieri here with me. Phil, how you doing tonight, brother?
Woo-hoo! That'll tell you all how I'm feeling. I'm energized. I just heard you say certain things to me and about me, and you probably heard a long and loud silence because all the things you said and the way you said it, I couldn't be happier.
Oh.
And I connect with you in a million ways. Ready?
All right. Well, listen, so I had said a moment ago before we officially got started that Jesse Fink wanted me to tell you hello, mate. And I wanted to, after that, just to me, it wouldn't, there's so much connection to AC/DC for both of us, you especially. I don't think it would be appropriate if we start without getting some of your thoughts on Power Up. I'm sure you've heard it, and it's been out for just a few weeks now. I think for so many people, feel free to tell me if this is part of your story for this year. I think that AC/DC ended up being, for rock and roll fans, as you know, with the Schaffer Vega diversity system back in the day, as we were growing up, Eddie was one of the players of that system, and of course we lost Eddie this year. And so it's still hard to say, because he was such an influence to me. He was just such a, when Balance came out, I've not shared this story, and I've actually got someone very close to very close to Van Halen that's I believe we're going to have on soon. And but I've not even shared this story with that person. When I was 15 and Balance came out, I actually I was in high school, and I thought I needed a new look. And I saw the back cover of the back jacket of Balance, and Eddie had cut his hair, and just that much of and I had a lot more hair back then. And then just the tips of the hair were like blonde, it's kind of spiked and sort of sheared on the sides. And I was like, oh my God, I got to have that haircut. And I ripped the ad out of Guitar World magazine for the 5150. And I went straight to the lady that cut my hair. And I was like, you got to cut my hair like this tonight, and she did, man. And it was so cool. And I loved it. Like, I think I kept it that way for a while. It's just, but that is the level. And, as an AC/DC fan, to do something like that, it takes a special connection for those of us who love rock and roll. The people who don't understand it and would never, but we do understand it. And I think in a lot of ways, to come around to my point, AC/DC in some ways really saved 2020 for rock and roll fans.
I can only agree 100%. I'm actually going to go ahead and say that I agree probably 110% or a million% with you with everything you said. Yeah, we grew up with that stuff. We grew up with rock and roll. We hear a lot about rock and roll being dead or having died, and of course you and I, we both have a few things to say about that.
For sure.
And people like you and me, we connected with those artists in more than one way. But it was, they were, especially back in the day.
Yeah.
Because everything was, and the kids of today, they probably try and connect, and they are inspired by other artists, contemporary artists, in similar ways, in that they are inspired. And so I think with that perspective, you and I, we can understand that they get a different message from the moment we got. Sometimes I wish it was closer to what we got, because I know that you and I, we got real music, we got real guitars playing,
Absolutely.
amplified with analog sounds, going through most of the time analog consoles, amplifiers, with people actually playing together. So this is so important to me, Aaron. People actually playing together. So if there's one thing that I really care about nowadays, and AC/DC still stand for that 110% once again, is playing together, being a part of a group of people, a group, many bands used to be called groups in Italian. In fact, they used to call it gruppo, group, because it's a bunch of people playing together. And the fact that they're playing together, just being together, it's not an easy thing, especially if it's a continuous process where they are stuck together and they have to make it happen together. And that alone, as human beings, is not the easiest thing to do, and it's never been easy, because all the elements of character and egos and personalities that they get in the way sometimes, and some other times actually they make the match so perfect, so that a few of those bands are still, very few actually, but are still together today, or they go back and forth, and they still exist. One of such bands is still AC/DC. Now, not many members of my favorite band of all times, AC/DC, in fact, are still alive and together. However, 2020 has managed to bring back together Mr. Brian Johnson, Mr. Phil Rudd, Mr. Cliff Williams, and Mr. Angus Young. And then, of course, Stevie Young joined in again, thank God.
Yeah.
And hello, Jesse, and hello, Stevie. I don't know, if they'll ever watch us from Australia, and they're both there right now. I know for sure. And Angus, I think, is also in Sydney currently. And so these guys, they managed to somehow stay together, which tells you and me, and I know that it does, because one of the reasons that I've always chosen AC/DC wasn't always and only about the music. And I have it's a huge subject, the music of AC/DC, and which I have studied in depth, and I never cease to study more and more. Not every day, probably, but at least very often, and at least during the times where I am producing some content, either for myself, for the channel, or for the company. So I go back there to studying some musical pieces that were made by them, and on a daily basis, I do talk with my engineer at SoloDallas LLC, and I say hello to Dries again. Hello, brother. He's in Europe right now, and I believe he's sleeping because he's a Flemish guy, and in Belgium it's nighttime. And if he's not sleeping, he should be sleeping right now and getting some rest. But on a daily basis, Aaron, I talk with my engineer, and we dissect, and not only him, with a bunch of friends, almost on a daily basis, we still dissect and debunk stuff about the sounds, the playing, how just amazing it was, and how was it ever possible that a bunch of guys got to be playing at the level that happened for AC/DC. And Jesse will agree with me on this, of course, as millions of other fans all over the world. So yes, 2020 brought it back. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. This album was not easy.
Oh,
and of course,
I'm sure not.
I do know about it. And I did participate in a little way, because our towers, our Schaffer towers, were and are part of this album as well. So they were, I can say it officially, that our Schaffer towers were used by Angus.
Awesome.
Again on this latest album, which of course makes me immensely happy, Aaron, and you do understand easily why.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because the two last and latest AC/DC albums, they both have this thing of mine, which is not of mine only. A large number of people participated in bringing these back, and we take the moment to say hello to Kenny Schaffer, for example, who will be watching us for sure. the inventor of the original system. And by the way, we do have the original system right here,
oh man,
Aaron, for us to see.
Yeah,
the original SVDS in all its weight. It's actually very heavy and containing so much circuitry of all kinds. So, and Aaron, as you can see and hear, I go from one thing to the other, and I essentially never stop talking. So you want to grab a hold of me and say, "Stop there, Phil, right now," and let's go back to this and that, and you'll have to do it because I
it's okay.
Just continue on for days about these things, and I will go so deep as analyzing even values of components inside.
Well, that's okay, because in Kentucky, some of us are talkers too. It's all right. We're going to get along well in that regards, I can promise you. But I'll ask it this way: how about a quick summary of your thoughts on Power Up?
I love it. I love it, and I love it for a number of reasons. I've already mentioned that a little part of me, of the company, all the people that have participated in several ways to this company. And again, it's now that it's 2020. It's been a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So it's not only me, myself, and I, but there have been a ton of people participating and applying their work to this for a few years now. So, yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to, you were talking about, I mentioned Power Up. You said, I love it. And the thing that I wanted to ask you was to go back to that needle drop moment, the very beginning. And you were quoted, I believe it was actually on the website on SoloDallas, that you were saying, "When I heard AC/DC's music, it filled my body with adrenaline." And as I was prepping for this, I remember thinking, I have never heard and this is in, this is in roughly 50 episodes. I've never heard anyone put that needle drop moment, that very beginning of that thing that leads you down the path. I shared a little bit of mine with you. Talk to me about that moment and take me back to that moment and tell me what it was like, because when someone says I believe you were 10 years old, says I'm 10 years old, and it filled my body with adrenaline, I got to hear that story.
Chills. I got chills through multiplying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think you can see it with the resolution of these iMac camera that I got, but you just gave me the chills again. Aaron, I still remember vividly the moment, the first time in my life, and yes, I was 10 or 11, and I was in Rome, and I remember the name of the store, the music store, that I don't even know if it's still there. It was called Disco Land, so it was an English name because, of course, in 78, 79, it resonated, the English language massively resonated internationally. So the Italians, of course, were also part of this, and whatever was in English or American English, it was just, oh my God, I love it. So with a buddy of mine, was still a very good friend of mine, and he took me to the store that day. We're roughly the same age, and we still talk about this, by the way. Just a few days ago, we were talking just about this moment.
Yeah.
We enter the store, and on the display window, Aaron, was the cover of the live album, Live More or Less. But if you want blocked, you've got it. And I say live more or less because that was the equivalent of AC/DC doing the song Remains the Same, or whatever the Led Zeppelin live album was. I forget the name of that album. But it actually had been re-recorded in the studio after the live takes for a good part, many of those parts. And the same went with If You Want Blood, You've Got It. So the picture is of Aegis with a black Gibson SG.
Yeah, that iconic photo. Yeah. It's awesome. So, it's an awesome cover.
I was 11. You see something like that, you're like, God, what is this? So my friend said, I'm going to say it with Italian accent. Oh, you have to listen to this now. Let's put it, and we put the earphones, both of us, because the store actually did have that sort of put the earphones and play and push play on the tape, because we had tapes at the time, bro.
Yeah, right.
And I started listening to and the crowds come in with a screaming and all that, and you start hearing the band coming. Aaron, I still get the same freaking goosebumps.
I know it's
And I started listening nonstop to the album for years, and I would fall asleep in my little bed at night listening to the live version, dreaming of jumping on the stage. That was a recurrent dream that I would fall asleep with. So you telling me about your things that, you know, and what made your heart
Yeah.
kick and
Yeah.
beat,
Yeah.
and we all connect with these
Yeah.
things. But even kids today, I think they connect somewhat with that, even if it's a different type of music, which I still hope is going to be played as much as possible on stage live by the people, not just to stare them with someone putting music and faking that they're, you know, and they're saying the DJ saying and mentioning, I'm playing this, you know. No, you're not, bro. You're not. All right, DJ. And we love you, DJs, because they still put some music we love, but it's not the same thing. So I still hope that more and more kids are going to come out and play those instruments. Does it have to be a guitar? No, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's got, you know, you can play it. Keyboards, pianos, bass, guitars. There's always going to be a bass guitar somewhere. You know, because bass, we need it. So 4 strings, 8 string, 12 strings bass guitar, because that's what they like today. The kids, a 12 strings bass guitar, because 4 ain't no or not. Tom enough no more. All right.
Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick, baby, the innovator of the 12-string bass, my favorite bands of all time. Yeah.
There you go. Do it. You know, you can't play because you have to be able to play that. More part of you, more power up to you. Go do it. We're happy.
Yeah.
So, but as long as they play live. So that was that album was what did it for me. Little did I know that most of the sounds of the guitar, of Inga's guitars in that album, were actually being played through this. Yeah. So that was a shocking thing for me. My first album that made me fall in love with AC/DC was actually being played with this guitar. This is a 1971, which is exactly in walnut brown.
It's beautiful.
What was being playing that night by Angus. So not this one. This is an earlier one. This is a 65. And through that device,
I was gonna guess 60. I was gonna guess 67 on that one. I was almost there, but yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was those mid to late 60s are beautiful. Guitar, right? Yeah,
absolutely, yes, sir. They're different from those ones, so they're all different, which is why I'm always curious and interested in trying one or the other. Which is another huge aspect of, playing guitar and what is a guitar, what she has to do for us and all that. So that's also equally essential to me. But I hope I was able to answer that question in less than 2 days.
No, I think you did. I think when you talk about it, here's was one of the takeaways I have from what you said. You're talking about a couple of things that really hit home for me. Growing up very much in a Mayberry kind of town here, up until around the 4th grade, I think we still had a mom and pop. Initially, it was called a record store, but just like you said, by 1989 or 90, it was cassettes. Most predominantly, there was really no, in small town America, at least in my small town America, there was no vinyl to be really accessed easily, and so it was cassettes, like you said. But it was that experience of going to the store, opening up that tangible physical product and reading the line. For me, speaking for myself personally, reading the liner notes, wanting to know, we get to the lyrics later, but I would always want to know who was involved with the album, because after a while, give you a good example, for so many bands growing up for me, whether it was Kiss, Alice Cooper, who have you, Desmond Child. I knew Desmond Child's name as well as I knew band members' names as a songwriter, because I saw his name in credits, but I didn't know what he looked like. I couldn't put a face with the name. Such a great songwriter helped write these anthemic songs. But it was that experience that you talked about, and then laying in your bed at night and just getting lost in that music the same way that I got lost in that music the same way I could have gotten lost in, you name it, Star Wars, whatever escapism, is the word I use often. But it was such an impactful thing. And I wanted to ask, was it in your teenage years that you really began to sort of, continue to follow that path, where you were really digging into the gear that Angus and Malcolm were using, the tones they were getting, and all of that sort of ball of wax that is more on the gear and production side of the fence.
Yes, it started there, and I think in those days with my buddy when we went there with Jacopo, and we went to the store and we had already started playing instruments. So the fact that AC/DC were playing guitars, of course, was even more important, because it was underlying for us the necessity of, we were much into the Beatles in those days. So imagine, I mean, from the Beatles jumping into AC/DC that way.
Yeah.
With the power, and you said the energy of that music. Now, I like to make a little parenthesis there with the energy, because I think every AC/DC fan knows about this, and I like at all times to be able to actually make more AC/DC fans, because I believe in that music, and because I love the founding members of AC/DC as family. And over the years, I've gotten close to them, in a way or the other.
Sure.
You mentioned the energy, and then we'll go back to the gear. But
yeah, sure. No,
AC/DC always an energetic band by design. So this is essential for us to know. So it was a deep belief of, and I don't want to get too deep because it makes people bored, but to all the people that listen to us today, if you haven't heard or dwelled into AC/DC's music of even the earlier years, and not only Power Up, of course, which sounds great and brings more of the same again to us, to the world, especially when the world needs it very much, like in these times. But even if you go back to the early music, it's that kind of experience where, by design, Malcolm and Angus Young and George Young, that just like the fifth Beatle, George Young was the sixth member of AC/DC, if not the third or second or even the first one. So let's tell each other this very clearly, guys. George was a huge factor in the early, and then how it developed over the future. And still to this day, I know that Angus thinks about what is George going to say about this. George actually left us, as Malcolm did, but I know that Angus thinks that in his mind. What is Malcolm going to say? What is George going to say? And the music was energetic because it was meant by design to be energetic, because they thought and believed that if it didn't move you, if you wouldn't dance to rock and roll, it wasn't worthy of being played or being recorded. So that was music that, to them, it was meant to be danced. You had to move to that. And so that speaks for the swing and for the kind of timing and groove and whatever we want to call that word. But it was in there by design. It wasn't easy. It's not easy to play rock and roll that way or rock that way, because rock can be sometimes a little stiffer. Rock and roll, that's why that's a distinction that I know there, Aaron. And I know that Malcolm cared about that very much, and Angus just followed that concept and principle, and it needed to have the swing and to make people move. So, and that translated into the energy, also thanks to the sounds and the way that and the gear that they used, which bring us back to the gear. So yes, I started researching. In Italy, back in the late 70s or 80s, really my access to gear, the way that I wanted, and what I would found out later, the type of gear that I wanted, was the only available type, probably in the late 70s, which was the right thing to have, with a Marshall amp and a Gibson guitar.
Yeah. Even
if one made in the 70s, still great instruments, as opposed to the ones made in the 60s or in the 50s. So it was harder for me. And most importantly, at the time, I had no notion, and even into the 80s, I had no notion that some specific instruments made in a certain way with certain values and all that would actually make the difference night and day from one way of sounding to another, and what they will let you and allow you to do or not.
Yeah.
In fact, I would dare say that rock and roll, or rock in general, was created and actually worked in a specific way, also partially because the initial instruments that it was played with sounded in a certain way, and they gave the players of those times a certain vibe that otherwise would not have existed, and the music would not have been created the same way. So when we moved into the 80s, the Gibson changed, and Marshall changed, and the sounds changed, and the music changed, and it was a different type of rock and roll. Even AC/DC changed in the 80s, because we have Back in Black and For Those About to Rock. As you know, it's the last of the 70s. You consider that. You can consider those two albums as the last of the 70s.
I agree.
And then you definitely enter the 80s, and it's different sounds. And they tried to look for different inspiration. They didn't find it. And in fact, it's not many people that actually go back to the 80s, to 1985, 6, 7, 88, and listen to AC/DC's albums.
Yeah.
Daily basis, because they do sound different. And I was even talking about, yes.
Oh, I didn't want to. I just 2 points real quick before I forget them. I wanted to say, I'm so glad that you put it that way about George Young, because I had the thought the other day that, I shouldn't say the other day, it was probably a month and a half ago. I was reading something that Jesse had written, and I had the thought that in so many ways, from what I know of the Beatles, George Young struck me very similar to being AC/DC's George Martin. He was that figurehead that was really in a lot of ways was the glue that pulled all that took all that chemistry, all that raw chemistry, raw elements of chemistry, and binded them together in such a way that I'm not sure anyone else could have done it exactly the same way. And then also I wanted to say that it was, I respect very much, although I believe the interviews I read with Malcolm before his passing, and I don't know that he had the interviews anytime close to that, even in the few years leading up to that. But after he passed, I did go back and read some interviews, just as maybe that was my way of, paying respect, or being, acknowledging this great, rhythm guitarist, but more than that, this great engine of this legendary rock and roll band had passed. And
beautiful. You said it. Engine. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I went back, and so I started to read. He was talking about Flick of the Switch. And to me, I always wondered, because I can listen to that album, the title track.
I love Flick of the Switch, huh?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to the title track, Bedlam in Belgium, Gun for Hire. I'm just thinking of a few tracks that come to mind immediately. Not to say the album itself isn't great. He was saying, and I'm going to have to paraphrase, I can't quote it, but he was saying that it probably wasn't, maybe the album that they wanted to turn out, or that would turn out. But I'll tell you why I respect that album so much. I respect the fact that they were willing to step away from Mutt Lange, not because Mutt Lange was a bad producer. I don't think anyone could look at Mutt Lange singularly and say, okay, this guy's not the producer good enough to do an AC/DC album. It was not that. I think Mutt Lange was as much of an artist as AC/DC was as much of an artist, and they couldn't allow another artist to change their artistry, if that, So if I said that, if you think I said that correctly, I'll leave it there.
I think you not only correctly, I think you said it poetically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Poetically. You put it in a very poetic way that fits wonderfully. And I know it's the truth, by the way.
Well, I'll take that. I don't get that often in Kentucky, so thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. That's just, it always jumped out at me that way, because again, I love so many tracks on Flick of the Switch, but I think it was, they recognized that by the time they were, had went through For Those About to Rock, I think they knew that Mutt was was becoming a superstar as a producer. As we've seen so many in different generations, we've seen these superstar producers. He was definitely one of those. And I think how hard, I mean, look at take Def Leppard for an example. And then although people don't think of them in that context probably as much now, look at the beginning of their career, that first 3 albums or so, how much they looked to AC/DC, Queen, and some others as influences. And you can hear that in those early albums. And it had to be tough to walk away from Mutt Lange and wonder what was going to happen, what was going to happen after that. So I wanted to ask, you had some time ago, after the SoloDallas community had started, and you had a community member had shared an interview that from the, was it early 80s, early mid 80s, Angus had mentioned, had spoken of his Schaffer Vega diversity system. Of course, it was so critical to live, as you have already mentioned once at least, to his tone, and you showed that beautiful example that you have there. And then, but not just him. I talked about Eddie. We know that I believe Kiss were some of the early users of that technology, and I believe the system in particular. There's been some bass players that I play bass myself. I love bass players. I know Rudy Sarzo in the funk realm, Bootsy Collins. I'm leaving so many out.
Back then, Phil Easy as well. Phil Easy, Phil Liner.
Yeah, Phil on it from Thin Lizzy. Yes, and it's funny that or ironic that you mentioned Thin Lizzy or mentioned Phil and Thin Lizzy, because I've been listening to Thin Lizzy almost nonstop lately. But I wanted to say also, who was I leaving out there? Steve Miller. Steve Miller. You guys did the you even on your YouTube channel, you did the video, and you guys were covering.
Yes.
Was it Take the Money and Run? What song did you did?
It's one of my favorite songs of and it'll tell you. So I'm not only into AC/DC, of course. I'm into great music that has great vibes. And Steve Miller was a user of the Schaffer as well.
That I was mentioning him in that context. I knew that he was a user of that as well. But so anyways, we've definitely hit on the critical nature of that system, the technology of the times. Because go ahead, yeah.
I just wanted to interrupt you for 1 second. I don't know if Steve's guitar player will see this. I might actually send it to him. But the nice, curious thing is that today's current Steve Miller's guitar player, other than himself, whose name I forget right now, I'm going to slap my face, but we've been in touch for quite a while.
Yeah, and
he became user as well of our technology probably 6-8 months ago. And he's going through now, of course, COVID happened.
Yeah.
So he liked it so much. He got a bunch of storms. So he's going to introduce that stuff to Steve himself, which is not a super easy player or artist. He's a tough guy that knows exactly what he wants. Old school type of guy. So, and still this guy will do that. This guy lives in Texas. I wish I remembered his name. Sorry.
Well,
so there's that, which I think always is a very fascinating thing when from the past, some of these artists, one way or the other, they come back into the realm of contemporary music and my products or our products still get to be a part of this game with those people. Another guy is Mutt himself. So Mutt Lange got to use a Storm pedal for one of his artists recently.
No kidding.
Playing guitar and fiddle. Yes, sir. So, and I thought was another Texan. And that was a very interesting thing. And it was a secret initially. And then I could actually talk about it because I was given permission to talk about this. Because one of Mutt's good friends actually had a Storm and brought it to Mutt and said, you should try this on the guitars and the fiddle. So he liked it very much. And he went on the album. So as you can see, the loops of times and place are really incredible.
It's such a small universe when you get into talking about it. This music, I noticed. I normally would say rock and roll. I didn't say rock and roll. I said this music thing because it really is such a small. It's such a small world. It's such a small solar system. I wanted to say real quickly about Steve Miller. It's interesting growing up because for me it was. that core nucleus of bands. It was it was Kiss and Def Leppard and AC/DC and watch my mind go blank as I try to rattle them off. I'm gonna have to look at my vinyl.
Welcome to my world.
Judas Priest and now Cheap Trick and just so many terrific bands. But with Steve Miller, I got to share this quickly because I've never got to tell anyone this, and you're the perfect guy to tell it to. He earned my respect in such tremendous volumes at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because I don't think the average rock and roll fan, number one, knows what goes on behind the scenes there. I don't think they understand how some artists are treated compared to some other artists. I don't think they know what they do in terms of, for example, if a band is being inducted into the right, I promise we'll get back quickly, but I got to make this point because I don't get to make it often enough. And I feel like this, be it a small platform, I've still got to say what I believe. When you've got a band like the Grateful Dead, and it's no disrespect to them, when they get inducted and you get people who were like co-writers or, barely had an attachment, and I don't say barely with disrespect, but let's just call it what it is, barely had an attachment to the band, get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You get, let's say like a Van Halen, you get David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar both inducted. And then when you get another band who says, we want band members, let's say they're a 5-piece band, so A through E, we want band members F and G also inducted. Kiss would be an easy example because they had the 4 original members were inducted, even though the guy from Rolling Stone who's involved with the halls said, as long as there's breath in my body, Kiss will never be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They eventually decided to make voting public, which, if that was his stance, was probably a mistake because they immediately had to swallow that pill. And then, although they put them in there, and then because of the publicity of it, it did well for Rolling Stone. So they finally stuck them on the cover after how many years? 40 years probably at that point. And then when they said, we want Eric Carr, who's passed away and who Rolling Stone wouldn't acknowledge, he got almost no respects paid. And it was no fault of anyone's, but just he passed away the same day as Freddie Mercury. They wouldn't induct him, wouldn't induct Bruce Kulick, who's a fine man and a gentleman and a real class act and has been on the show. Why do you do it for bands A and B, but you won't do it for this other band who sold 100 million records plus? And I hope I'm right on those numbers. But the point being, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should be no different than the foundation of our country. It should be by the people, for the people. Should be the same way in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in my opinion, as a rock and roll fan. And like I said, this is a small platform, and certainly I'm not an arrogant guy, but I think that from my point of view, I've got to state those things the way that I believe them, or I wouldn't feel right about myself, Phil. So, but I wanted to say, so that just getting back to the point that yeah, sure. No, that community member shared an interview with you about with Angus about where he referenced his diversity system, right?
Yeah, Peter. It was Peter.
Yes.
Hi, Peter. So Peter sent.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, that's very nice. And Peter sent a real mail. He had the address in the Netherlands.
Wow.
So he wrote Angus and Ella saying, I think this crazy Italian guy really found something interesting, and I think that you should check this out. So, because Angus and Ella, they both told me when I went to Canada to meet them in the studio, they both told me, yeah, Phil, we got this regular mail by a fan, and we read it, and Angus told me, I didn't know where to get the thing, with his voice. And so, and it was Peter, and I talked to Peter. We just spoke the other day, wishing each other Merry Christmas. Because what, Aaron, what happened to me, which is magic, is that all these people, I already told you earlier, all these people that I got to meet at first online, and then it became, I'm telling you this, I still get more goosebumps.
Yeah.
And And by the way, I'm gonna catch you in Kentucky. Just wait for me because it's
Oh,
happening.
you're welcome. Anytime.
Even happening. Period.
Hospitality here, man.
Even if Kentucky's not hospital towards me and they kick me in the guts, I'm still going to come over because
I welcome that. That'd be great.
Right. And so so many people over the years, and they became friends, and we are a community of people that are like-minded people.
Yes.
Is what I love very much. And of course, the AC/DC are a common denominator, not just for the music, but for the values that very often are expressed by the type of such long-standing act that continued. There have to be some great values of that. So when I flew to Canada, to Vancouver, because we had been invited by Angus, Ken Schaffer and myself, we had been invited because Peter wrote the letter. They got it, and then they gathered in to start recording the new album. So we thought that was a very good moment to get in touch with AC/DC's management, which is the only way to get in touch with Angus, by the way, unless you're a friend of Ella's, because Angus has no cellular phone, doesn't, it's very intimate bunch of people, very close circle of people, doesn't even have a phone, does not answer the phone and all that. He goes through Ella. So we went through the management. The management got a hold of them and said, these guys want to propose this. And he said, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's get them. So they called us to Vancouver. We flew. Kenny Schaffer flew from New York and I flew from Rome. I almost didn't want to go, Aaron. I almost didn't want to go. Why is that, Phil? Aaron, what do you do when you are due to meet your hero of a lifetime since you were 10 or 11 years of age?
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you put it with yourself? What am I going to do when I meet my hero? So I almost did go, and I told Kenny Schaffer, I don't want to go, Ken. I'll say it with my Italian. I don't want to go. I'm scared. I'm afraid. What's going to happen? And he said, if you're with a New York accent, if you're not going to come and chase after your ass in Rome, and I'm going to, sorry, my bad mouth, I'm going to catch you and bring you to Vancouver myself. So when he said that, I said, this is okay.
Yeah, all right, I'll go.
And off I go. We met in Vancouver, and at 6:25, I think, we were due there at 6:30. We were there in the room, and they were eating, Aaron. They were eating around that table that is upstairs in just outside of the recording room and the control room.
Wow.
And we saw they were eating, and I said, oh, God, no. We got here earlier. They're still eating. What am I going to do now? The embarrassment. And there was a moment of silence, but not because they were eating, of course, just because we were new people to them. Yeah. And I was new people to them, but Kenny used to be friends with Angus.
Right,
so that reconnected right away, and that was wonderful for me because also it helped me walk away from my sheer panic.
Yeah.
Okay, of being there. And I became talkative like I usually am after a while. Ella treated me with some rice and chicken that she had made for the band because she's the cook there.
Oh man,
as well. So we got together that way, and we got it flowing that way pretty quickly after a while that I sat down at the table, and it was just wonderful. I still remember that vividly.
It's moving to me. I was going to tell you this. You have the picture, of course, in one of the blog posts or articles at SoloDallas.com. And man, I'll tell you the picture of you meeting Angus.
You can edit this out. You can edit this out as I walk up and grab the picture.
Sure, man.
I am back in the frame, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I appreciate it.
Look, and I got to say, look at that smile, man. That is the most, as I looked at that picture, I'm thinking, what a genuine smile. Like you were so happy and so just,
you would know,
loving.
I can tell, I can tell by how you are and the questions you ask yourself. And I can tell immediately, the type of person. So, I was pretty happy. I was actually in a state of disbelief I mean, is this really happening? Am I really putting my hand on this kid's shoulder? Because he looks like a kid.
Right.
I'm not very tall, but he's,
yeah,
he's shorter than me anyway. So
I think that, when we have the opportunity to interact with someone like that, and some people I think that don't understand this world we love so much, it's not about, to me, it's not about so much adulation or putting someone on a pedestal. It's about respect. It's about, and obviously for you, it has to be respect. Look at what you've done with some of the things that Angus and Malcolm have championed throughout the years, and you've picked up that, you've taken that torch and moved forward with it. It's the same reason that, you heard what I said about just even the Solo X that I was talking about earlier. It's just that, in my opinion, and this is just the opinion of a 40-year-old guy from Kentucky, but based on what I've seen in life, you don't get that kind of quality, and you don't get those kind of things that happen out of having something being an idol or something being, it's about respect and about passion around that area. And but when I see that picture of you with Angus, man, it makes me happy. I looked at it probably 3-4 times getting ready for today, because it just, every time I would look, I was like, man, Phil is just that had to be one of the you said it in one of the articles I read. I think you said outside of your wedding day and the birth of your kids and those things, it was one of the happiest moments of your life.
It is.
Yeah.
It was one of the best days, one of the best moments of my life, and it continues on because I can cherish that, because so much happened after that. Aaron, that was just the beginning of the adventure. I had no idea that it was. I didn't even live in the US just yet. I was still in Rome, so I flew back to Rome, and so much stuff happened after that. I would only know 2-3 days later, and I'll tell our friends about that shortly. But you mentioned the respect. Now, first off, they put me in a situation where I could be myself, because that's who they are. So Angus is super humble. I was calling Steve Young was there too. And I was calling Steve Sir or Mr. Steve or something like that, because it's typical of the Italian language to actually say, the Italians say things differently. So
yeah,
he looked at me, disbelief. Stevie looked at me and said, like, meaning, what the fuck, man? What are you talking about? How are you saying Steve or yes, sir, something like that? So because they are very, very down to earth, straightforward, somewhat even shy, if I can tell, about Angus.
Yeah.
I'm sure that he also wonders about the question. He knows that he's a hero to many, and he can barely see himself that way. He doesn't like that, he doesn't like to be on the pedestal from the very beginning. He never liked it. And him and Malcolm and George, they're a very simple family, and very warm people, by the way, as well. And they're still today. So I could be how I was, and how I could behave in that particular situation, mostly thanks to them. Were it some different kind of person, I would have had to behave differently. And so, and I realized that very, very quickly as well. So, and secondly, Aaron, we're talking about the guy that played the solo to Back in Black, the song Back in Black. Now, I know that people, would slap me. I'm going to slap myself, all right, here. Because over the years, many people said, won't you quit playing that stuff? You always do that. Guys, it's so tough to play it that way. We're not playing a different, we're not doing, it's not metal. It's truly a clean, dirty, rock and roll, bluesy kind of thing, done with that timing, with that intention, with that vibrato, with that touch. It's uber hard. I don't know how we made it. I still try with that vibrato, which it's screaming. It's an internal singing voice that comes out to you with that vibrato.
Very much so.
Cuts you in half and gets to your brain like that. It's unbelievable. And I don't think he gets as much credit as he should have, or should be getting credit for the way he played several things. Because he should be higher, in my humble, not so humble opinion, on the ranking scale of many people nowadays. It should really be up there with the very, very few first guitar players in the world. That should, top 5 or something like that. But again, slap me.
I don't think you need slap. I don't think you need slap for that one. I think the people that compile those lists, I think the people that compile those lists at Rolling Stone need slapped on that one.
So because I knew already at the time when I was next to him, and I already knew, and we still do it daily, we still talk about it daily, how was he possibly able to pull it that way? And that's us Back in Black, just one solo, 1 second, couple seconds of that solo. And I know it's impossible to pull out that way. I just know it. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anyone else in the world. I want to say that too, Aaron. I have not heard anyone else in the world pull it out the same way that he pulled it out. I try and I emulate, and I kind of get there sometimes after trying for 30 days, 8 hours a day, practicing, and maybe I can cut one, one track in a single cut, or I have to actually comp together some bits and pieces with my solos in order to be up to, to where he was. And we still wonder, did Mutt actually do the same? Did Mutt comp Angus' solo for Back in Black and Highway to Hell? Kind of has suspicion that sometimes that could have been the case, as opposed to a whole single solo played that way. So as you can hear, I'm talking to you, and those things are still pretty much in my head. This is what we talk about with amongst the guys, the fans, and guitar players. Just the daily stuff that we talk about.
That's just what we are, and the way that to my response to that, as you ask about Mutt, that would be, and not because of Angus, not because of Phil Collin, not because of any of the other artists that Mutt worked with. I think that's Mutt Lange, because Mutt Lange has something going on in here that I think the average musician, I can tell from watching your videos, you're far and away beyond average. You're at a very high level, and I'm probably closer to average. I don't think we can grasp some of the things that are going on internally with Mutt Lange in the production realm, and I think that he is searching for something when he sits down behind a console, or whatever his process is like nowadays. He is searching for something with his mind and his inner ear that I don't think we can even grasp. He just has a certain set of characteristics that makes him Mutt Lange. I wanted to just quickly, Phil, and we'll start to wind down. I wanted to ask you, what was when you reached out to Ken Schaffer initially, the vibe that I got was that he was very warm and approachable about your interest in the previous existence of the Schaffer Vega diversity system. Tell me quickly about what that was like reaching out to him at that moment.
Yes, quickly is a word that is, of course, not part of my vocabulary, but I'll try.
That's fine. You just do your best. That's fine.
He's very warm. He was very warm. He's very warm just because he's a very warm person. He's also one of a kind. He's a genius in his own way. And let's keep in mind that he was 26, 27 when he pulled out Schaffer Vega. He did not invent the entire system. Of course, he partnered with Vega Corporation. So they put together some ideas that he had in order to perfect the system, and they put it into practice. And it worked that way for quite a few years. So Kenny is a genius, period, new line. And I approached him as such. And so I was extremely respectful, again, and careful. And I didn't know where to get his contact. And I had tried looking on blogs and stuff. And I had emailed him a couple of times, but I don't think he ever gotten those emails. He probably hadn't gotten it, or went in the spam, or wasn't interested. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I went to LinkedIn, and I had to pay $25. At the time, if you wanted to write an email to someone that was not part of your connection,
like LinkedIn Premium, is that what?
Yes, sir.
Man, that's great. That's great.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Great. So I paid $25. I wrote an email that I still have. He still has it, and sometimes he throws it at me because it was like this. And I said, "Oh my God, Mr. Schaffer, I just discovered that your invention was part of the sound of this and that." He didn't know, Aaron. He did not know that the Schaffer had been used in the studio.
Wow.
He didn't know.
He didn't know that. He didn't know it was used on Back in Black?
No!
Man.
He did not know. He didn't know because he wasn't told. He didn't even care, Aaron.
Yeah.
He was, what, 30, 29 at the time?
Yeah,
All he was carrying probably was selling a bunch more of those units that were so expensive.
Yeah.
So, and plus, he had conceived this to be a wireless device for live performances.
Yeah.
He's not going to think that some crazy guy is going to use it in a different way as intended. Because let's remember, this unit was supposed to be used from the rear, no boost, just going inside the amp from the rear with no boost. But the guitar players started using the monitor output that has an extremely powerful amplifier that starts boosting right after you turn it on, and then you continue.
Yeah, right.
It's the first clean boost of the history of music, probably. The first clean boost used this way. It wasn't meant for that, but people like Angus used it as such, and it worked that way, providing those tones and sustain and the decibels and all that.
Well, so let me real quick, Phil. I just want to ask. So with the Solo X, yes, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong on any point of this, with what I'm holding in my hand is just is because you mentioned the boost. The boost is singularly the boost element of that Schaffer Vega, the Schaffer Replica rather now.
It's correct. It is. However, we never take away, we never stripped, even with the Solo X, is still the fundamental circuitry that lies inside the audio circuitry of this. So
absolutely.
The Solo X it's a simpler format where essentially it's a storm pedal with the input maxed out. This is an older unit. So essentially the Solo X that you have there has this knob maxed out. And so we deleted the knob itself and the possibility to control it. And we just left this one. And there's no limiter there, in fact. Yeah. So this is one actually that we took out just to, maximize.
That makes sense.
And make it easy to produce and all that.
Originally, it makes sense. But I was going to pick up a Storm. I waited. I know your stuff moves quick. I know because I waited. I'd seen it a couple weeks earlier, and I was going to wait until the next pay period or whatever. I was going to wait a couple weeks.
To know, our friends, whatever means to people, to some people it means something. To other people it means nothing. But our stuff is made here in the U.S. And I want you to know, okay, as Americans, you and I want you, Aaron, to know. I wanted to take the stuff back to the U.S., sir.
You beat me to it.
I love the U.S. of A. I love this country. This country gave me another chance at life. But even before the chance at life, I just loved the U.S. I grew up loving this country. Man. Period.
Thank you.
All right. So this stuff is all made here in the U.S. No, thank you. It's all made here in the U.S. It's, some components might come from the other side of the ocean. Sure. But it's all made here in the U.S.
But I appreciate the fact that you're proud that your stuff is all made in the USA, assembled in the USA. That tells the story, because how many companies nowadays are really proud and express pride over that fact. And that's, to me, that means something. And it means something, especially in your case, because your stuff is the best. I would put it up against anybody. And it's not because you're sitting here. I had you come on the show because I bought your stuff. So that should tell the story. I probably did have, I've got a list, I've got a list in my journal of probably 125 or 150 names. Your name was on that list, but it wasn't until I plugged into this Solo X and had a few minutes with it I wish I could have had a lot more minutes with it prior to tonight, but it didn't take more. It didn't take more. It was just in a few minutes. It was an immediate, instant Angus, and that phrase that gets thrown around as it's attached to, or gets used as it's attached to SoloDallas is not, that's not thrown around because there needs to be another catchphrase or another phrase thrown around. It's legit. It is 100% legit, and that's something to be proud of. And I know that you are. So
the phrase, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The phrase didn't come to us. We didn't make it. We didn't fabricate that phrase. It came to us from Michael Melenda. Hello, Mike.
that's, yeah, I should have. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's correct. I missed that detail.
No. Don't you dare. Don't you dare being sorry. Be happy. Because you made me happy tonight. I'm sure. And so Mikey, he plugged in one of our early towers. It was back in 2015, and he called Kenny Schaffer back and myself. It was just, the AC/DC album was just coming out in 2015, Rock or Bust. And so he said, "Oh my God, guys, this thing it's instant Angus." And he said it like that, and we were like, "Oh, we'll use it, Mikey. Can we use it? Go ahead, Phil. Use it. Done."
That's great, man. Well, listen, let's leave it here and let's have some fun wrapping up. I'm going to ask you two questions, and we'll see if you. So, number one, favorite, because I know your affinity for Back in Black. You've mentioned some other albums. Favorite AC/DC album.
Back in Black.
All right. How about we've talked a little bit about the beautiful Gibson SG. I have one back here. You've got several there that are much of a more vintage and classic and
yes, sir.
Incredible nature. With the SG, what is your favorite model of Gibson SG?
It's not this one. I'll tell you that. I like this one because it's red. This not even cherry. This one. It's a more rare kind of red. But believe it or not, my favorite one is that 71 that I showed you earlier.
Yeah. The walnut.
Go and pick it.
The walnut that had kind of the beige poker chip.
Yes, sir. And because it was that first one that my eyes caught early on. It's not only about the color. There's so many things going on here. The cutaways are different. It's a completely different guitar.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be less collectible. It is supposed to be less collectible compared to earlier guitars. This is 71 again, and it's my favorite number one, of course, because I was flashed early on by Angus Young using it. And, as very often happens to us when we're children, we're impressed with something early on.
Absolutely.
And it just sticks with us for the rest of our lives. This is her.
Well, I want to, Phil, sincerely thank you for spending some time with us tonight with me and with Rocker Nation. And man, having you as a part of this lineup is so cool to have you be a part of this. As I said, in 2021, we're going to be doing so much more with gear and with guitar reviews and just amp reviews and different things. So
I want to see you again. I want to be on here again. Get in touch with me again. We're going to tell a different angle of the story. We're going to do something different, but I want to be with you and your friends and our friends again. I want to see you in 2021. Whether we can see each other. Oh,
I can have you back before then.
Live stuff that can.
Well, there's a couple things we may do. I have, and Jesse, I don't know that he'll want to do this, but he loves the album Power Age. I love the album Power Age. I'm looking for an album to do a rundown. I haven't got to do a rundown yet on an AC/DC album. Now, so far, we've done Van Halen, Women and Children First. We've done Kiss Alive. We've done, and why am I forgetting a rundown album that we've done? We've done British Steel. Yeah.
Aaron, as a student of those years, of those songs, of those production techniques, of the gear used back then, please use me for this. Whether
absolutely.
Power Age, I love Power Age, of course. Back like my so please include me in this. I cannot wait to discuss with our friends again following
Phil,
how it was recorded, what was used, how it was played, why, and so on and so forth.
Phil, I will let you pick the album. And if you have a particular musician in mind, I will let you pick an additional person to put on the panel, and we'll leave it there.
Sir, yes, sir. Oh my
Hey,
God, have a wonderful year. You and all your friends and all our listeners, and thanks for listening to us today.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to let everybody know once again, go to SoloDallas.com. It's Dallas just like the city, SoloDallas.com, and you'll see the entire product line up there. It'll let you know everything that's in stock. And I want to make sure that if you're going to go out and get hooked up with great gear, you get the best from this guy right here, from Fil Olivieri. And I want to thank you for coming, Phil. And Rocker Nation, look out for the 1 year. Our 1 year anniversary was on Veterans Day. Phil, I wanted to point out we launched on Veterans Day too, and there are reasons behind that you and I will talk about later. The show launched on Veterans Day. But so our 1 year anniversary was this past Veterans Day. I took a few weeks off just to get a breather. We are going to now celebrate the 1 year anniversary and downloads and streams in 67 or more countries. And we're going to give away some fantastic stuff. I can promise you right now that I will have something from SoloDallas in that lineup, and you can look out for that.
You can play something for your show. It's on us. So
you will let us know. Man, that is too kind, Phil. Thank you so much.
It's a joy, and amongst like-minded people, that's how it should be. Very often it is how it is, and certainly it's going to be like that as such for you and I.
Well, listen, I can't wait to have you back. Sounds like we got a classic rock rundown boiling here, and I'm ready to jump into that. So you've been a fantastic guest, man. I love talking to you. You're exactly the kind of person I love to have on this show, and I can't wait to get into 2021. Talking with guys like you give me hope that we've got some cool stuff coming up in 2021 as life normalizes, and I can't wait to see what's out there. But brother, I will let you get back to your evening. I want to be respectful of your time. And thank you so much for coming, Fil Olivieri from SoloDallas. And we will be talking with you again, my friend.
Have a wonderful day, you people. Talk to you soon, Aaron. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Goodbye, brother.
Have a great night. Okay.